spouses holding 1G or stamp 3A, they find some of the difficulties in getting into the job market, despite having all the knowledge, despite having all the previous background and experiences, and despite having all the visa formalities, they still find that the job market is a little hostile towards them. Why is it so? What are the things that we can do to nail this job market? And is there something that stops us from getting the jobs that we like and that we deserve? So I would be sharing some of my insights over it, and then finally we'll have some Q&A sessions to take some of your questions. But just before that, I'll start with my next slide. The rules first. First, until asked, I would appreciate everyone who are on that to please be on mute and avoid any crosstalks. If you have any questions, or I'll be answering all the questions after 30 minutes of discussion. So last 10 minutes I've kept it for all the Q&As. And if you have any questions, then I would suggest to type in the comment box. I'll read that and I'll take that once my slides are over. All right. So what I'm going to talk about in this first, okay, I just missed an agenda, but I'll speak out the agenda. What is the agenda that I have to discuss? First, I'll talk about that. What is the employer's perspective? What are the employers think? What are the stakeholders of employers, be it hiring manager, recruiter, or decision maker, or I would say it's a policy maker? What they expect out of the spouses that hold 1G and 3A. So I'll talk about the employer perspectiveness, and then I'm going to talk about that why I will just take down one of the surveys, that survey we have conducted. So somebody has a background noise. Can you please put yourself on mute? So then I'm going to talk about a survey that Career Island has conducted with around more than 200 people, and what were the results of that, and what were the inferences based out of those survey results. And then I'm going to talk about that what are the companies which are very much favorable for spouses holding 1G and 3A, mainly 1G, little lesser on 3A. So these companies could be your target companies to look for. Then perhaps I'm going to talk about your job search strategies and career strategies, why many times you guys fail in getting a job on quick basis. For example, if you're getting in Ireland on particular month and you are now not able to get a job in first 3 months, then it is considered as a late getting a job. So what are the reasons why spouses mainly get job on late basis? What is the rationale behind? And then I'm going to talk about that what is a conventional versus unconventional ways of searching jobs. And finally, I'm going to talk about that what are the companies which even in the state of COVID-19, they are hiring spree, they are still hiring, and they have further plans to continue their hiring throughout the year. And okay, so let me go through all these one by one. So first we'll talk about employer's perspective. One of the complaints that I have got with many of my mentees who come to me, they say that the moment they tell the employer about their 1G, they say that no, we are not going to take you in because our policy doesn't allow. Mostly take any recruiter's name. If you go back to recruiter, many times recruiter comes back and say that no, company is not ready to take you in because of XYZ reasons. So 1G is out completely. Stamp 3 holders face a little more difficulty because they would have, although in terms of perspectiveness, I would say they both are the same because they both have employment rights. It's just that 1G just have got a straight away working license, whereas for 3A, you just have to go and get the work permit again. So quickly coming back to employers' perspective, recruiters, firstly, you need to understand why recruiters are little agnostic against 1G holders. One of the key reasons is that most of the companies go to recruiters when they are unable to do the hiring by themselves, or they go to the recruiters when they think that these kind of skills, these kind of people in the given time frame, for example, if a time frame is very low, then they would not be able to get by themselves. If they have done some internal referral program within the company, they don't get it, then they go to the recruiters. And when they go to the recruiters, there is a rough estimation, I would say 8 to 12% of commissions that recruiters get. I may be differing with different companies, but there is some kind of commission associated with recruiters. And they get a higher commission on the basis of sometimes, not always, they get on the basis of various factors. That includes no sponsorship, that includes EU citizen or maybe stamp for holders, or they consist of early joining within 1 month, or they consist of a very, I would say, niche skills. So depending upon all these criticalities, recruiters has some of the tied hands due to which they cannot accept 1G people, and that is the reason they come back and say that no, we can't do that. But that's not always the case. For example, if a company, I've seen many of these cases in many times in the past few years, a recruiter comes back say that company is not ready to hire you because you are a 1G holder, but the company itself agrees that no, it's fine, it's not a hard and fast rule, we would be able to hire for the same company. One person applied through recruiter and one person applied directly on the company website, and company was able to take him in despite having 1G, because it was not a hard and fast rule. It was hard and fast for recruiters, but it was not a hard and fast rule for the company itself. So don't think that if a recruiter has so said no to you, the company will say no. Many times company is not very strict about having providing sponsorship, not providing sponsorship, giving, allowing 1G people, stamp 1G people to get in, not allowing 1G people to get in. So these are not very hard and fast rule. If a company has written many times, and this is based on my own experience and one of my, not one but many of my mentees experience, even when in the job spec, when in LinkedIn, when a job spec says that company needs to have a full-time sponsorship, or a company need to have XYZ things, or 1G need not to apply, when they go through the employee, when they find that the person is really worthy enough, they still make an exception, they still make an offer to the people. So that is never a hard and fast rule. There is a hard and fast rule in some companies, especially banks and financial institutions, but apart from banks and financial institutions, there is usually not a hard and fast rule. So this thing should not be stopping you by. Third thing is, hiring manager is just a person. Hiring manager give instructions to the recruiter that what kind of profile he would require for. And most of the times, recruiter will not come back to the hiring manager saying that I've got a good candidate who could be fit for you, but he does not hold a stamp for, or he does not hold a EU citizenship. He has 1G, so would you take an recruiter would not like to go to the hiring manager. But if you happen to go to a hiring manager, you can definitely ask even for a sponsorship. You can definitely ask for letting you in with 1G or 3A. So this is only subject to the negotiation. Do not take anything hard and fast over here. The third thing is a decision maker. So decision maker, I would say that if you are going for any kind of role, let's take it like business analyst, you'll first have a informal discussion with the recruiter about your salary packages, visa status, and all these kind of things. And then you are going to have round one decision with a hiring manager who could happen to be a team manager or someone, or team lead. And then you are going to have another, that would be the most important round of interview with the job decision maker. That would be director or a senior manager or someone senior. So he is going to make a decision about you, whether you will be hired or you will not be hired. The key thing to ask for a sponsorship, or to ask for a salary decision, or to ask for 1G or anything, is with that decision maker, because he can make an exception very easily basis. So it's the right time. Hiring manager may not have this thing in hold in his hand that he could take a decision, but the decision maker definitely have this kind of. All right, looks like I'm back. There was some issues with Zoom. Okay, so I'm coming back to sharing my screen again. Okay, guys, if in case you find anything disruptive, or if you're not able to hear me, if you're not able to see me, or you can't see my slides, just unmute yourself and call out. So the third thing is the company policy maker. Fourth thing, rather, I would say, is a company policy maker. At times, if you talk about some of the leading banks, they have a company policy. That company policy says that if you are not Irish citizen, or rather EU citizen, or not a long-term resident, be a stamp 4, then you can't work in risk advisory, you can't work in anything related to cash flow statements and anything financial, core financial of a bank and financial institutions. So there is sometimes a company policy, especially finance, insurance company, and BFSI companies. So if you happens to be applying for those companies, then I would say that there is no point. It's no point because it's a company policy and nobody is going to make an exceptions. But for the other companies, tech companies, and small and medium enterprises, there is always a room of negotiation, and you can negotiate and you should negotiate. I have seen some tremendous results when people negotiate on that. And do not be afraid of doing any negotiations. There are only two type of things where you would not be able to negotiate. One is with the recruiter. There's no point in negotiating with the recruiter. He does not have anything in his hands. Second, there is no point in applying to a company where the company policy is about not taking any 1G holder or so. So for the hiring manager and decision maker, definitely you should negotiate. So I will come back to my next slide. Hang on. So I'll just give you a few names where employers are seen accepting 1G readily. It's a general observation and not it's a standard rule for these companies. You talk about Fidelity, Grant Thornton, Accenture, AWS, Citi, Deloitte, Pramerica, Davy, and especially MasterCard. So these are the companies, these have been seen accepting 1G readily. But it also depends on what kind of role you have been applying for. For example, there's a general trend. If you're applying for a graduate role or if you're applying for an entry level role, most of the companies, rather 9 out of 10, will never like to sponsor you or would not like to even accept 1G many times. So, but for any senior kind of role with 3 to 5 or even 5+ years experience, if you're going to these companies with 1G, it is hopeful that you would not be face any kind of challenges in getting acceptance with 1G. So now coming back to the thing, why spouse 1G and stamp 3 success is so low. So just before, please pardon me for that. So just before we go about on these things, I would just like to give you a quick survey that careerisland.com conducted. So we conducted around more than 200 people for various segments to see that when they got job, these survey was only for those people who got jobs. And when they got jobs, we conducted a survey, checked with them. Many of them were our mentees only. So we asked them that what is the average period you found when you actively start searching job and when you actually got a job? So what is your payback period? What is your return period on that? So surprisingly, students get the lowest. Students who get 1G after completing graduation get the lowest job search period with 3.5 months. Then it came about spouses of 1G. They on an average took 6 months, which is a big time after in searching a job and getting a job. And finally, sorry, this is little wrong. This is not 1G. And the third one is stamp 3A. For stamp 3A people, they usually take on an average 10 months after they arrive. So, and this is understood because from 3A they have got an additional hurdle of getting a work permit, and only then they can work. So 10 months is pretty hell time, but I would say even for 1G, 6 months is a long period before one could actively start job and one could actually get a job. So now we are going to get back that why that is such a big time. 6 months is a very big time in an active job search, despite having a kind of a work permit in hand. Why there is so much uncertainty, why there is so much a big time in all this. So one of the key reasons I have noticed that mostly people with spouses, most of the things with spouses, that is when they come to Ireland, they don't have the local market knowledge. So when they don't have a local market knowledge, they have an CV which is from Indian context, with the Indian way of writing, or with, if anyone is a non-EU, non-Indian, then he would have a non-EU specific writing spec. So that language is typical, not suitable for Irish language, and most of the times the language is very basic, very cliche, and I would say they don't have a kind of knowledge about the local market, how the local market see you. That is one of the problem. Second problem is you have done a job with X. For example, you have done a job in relation to some coordination kind of role, and now you are going into a analyst role. There is a big difference between the two. So and that the gap between that, I'm not taking about the career break in the gap, I'm saying the gap between what you have done outside of Ireland in your previous experience and what you are targeting at. For example, business analyst role in India and business analyst role in Ireland are quite different. They are quite different, and there is a gap between the two. So sometimes a job seeker does not understand what is the difference between, what is the gap, not say difference, but it's a gap between what they have and what they are targeting. And this is very quickly seen by the employers. They can see it in the glance of 5 seconds that no, there's a big gap, we are not going to hire. The third thing is many times your job search strategy is not even adequate. You are just applying mindlessly to hundreds of jobs and you're not getting any response. So you have to move on to the tailor-made strategy which fits your role. I'll come back to this tailor-made strategy in the next slide. Other problem that I have seen is many times, especially if you talk about testing, if you talk about network engineering, or if you talk about testing, network engineering, or some database related roles. So and sometimes SAP roles too. So these are the roles. If you are applying for these, there are not a very mainstream job market. That means you will not find 20 jobs in a week on LinkedIn or in Irish jobs in a in a good market. So even in a good market, these kind of roles are little bit low. So there is not adequate roles into the market. And when you have a combination of bad CV or unfamiliarity in the market with low number of jobs in the market, it is a disaster. It's a complete disaster. So, and the last thing is many times you don't know the Irish culture well, and you don't know what are the unconventional ways of talking to people, getting into networks, using your LinkedIn. So these all are the things. Basically, I would relate it to the CV, I would relate it to your lack of knowledge, and I would relate it to your profile. So these are the reasons that usually spouses and stamp holders get a little longer time in finding and landing a job. Next, I would come back to second, conventional and unconventional job strategies. So, and this is the most important slide, and I would request everyone to pay attention over it, because mostly we are always on the left hand side of conventional job search. How we find the jobs? We find a job through portal. We apply in bulk. If you don't get a job in first month, we apply more. We apply more. We consume everything. We go back to our LinkedIn connections, we go back to our friends, family, friends of friends, and ask them for referrals, give them the referrals. We focus on our education, that okay, I have learned this, I have done this, and let's go back on that and try to sell that. We look for opportunities. So now I'll tell you what is the conventional and unconventional ways of finding jobs. Whereas in conventional way you find a job, in an unconventional way you don't find, you are looking for be found. For example, if I talk about when I was looking for a job, one of the key reasons I had more than 5 jobs uh, in hand before I completed my graduation was not because I applied for a number of jobs. It was because I made all those things in my CVs, in my LinkedIn, and in my network, and especially I would say in LinkedIn, that I was found by recruiters and companies who approached me. I appeared in those search engines, how the search engines works. I had a good knowledge of how the search engine worked. I had all my blogging, I had all my GitHub pages and all that. So I was found very easily. So because I was found very easily, people used to approach me first. I didn't have to look for the jobs to people. Second thing, when you apply in bulk, it is also a methodology, it is a conventional way, but at times in unconventional market you have to narrow down. For example, when you have to narrow down, you have to focus down on one thing, or maybe one thing mainly and one thing as a backup. So you narrow down one thing, you narrow down one set of companies, one group of companies, I would say. We set down for a very niche requirement. We see that these kind of roles, for example, if I talk about any of the product manager or any of the QA role, let's take about QA role. Many people find hard to get jobs in QA. So QA roles, so one could look at industry, one could look at tools, one could look at all the necessary behavioral aspects which you have. So going down, instead of applying for more, he would narrow down all the things so that for any 6 or to 8 set of companies that would be fit for his hiring, he would fulfill 9 out of 10 all the job requirements that they require for. And when you get this, you will be easily be found, you will be easily be able to get. Third thing is about the personal brand. This comes how you present yourself. You need to understand one thing, that if you're into a job market, you are into a show business, and your perception is most important thing. If you don't have a good perception, you are already failed, you are already gone. And this perception comes from your personal brand. Your personal brand comes from your CV. Either it comes from your CV, or it comes from your first interaction, or maybe I would narrow it down the first 5 or 10 minutes of your first interactions. But mostly it comes from your CV. So your CV must be very highly, I would say, uh, categorized into right accomplishments, right experience, written down in an extremely polished language so that one could easily understand that who you are, what you are looking for, how you can help the company, what you have achieved in your life, and how you distinguish yourself in the crowd. This personal brand is also related with your perception. If you're working on your experiences, it's good, but you need to work on your perception as well, how you are perceived in the market. One of the key reasons you apply for 200 jobs and you don't get any response from them is that you have got a poor perception. One of the key distinction, I would say, between conventional and unconventional job is, in conventional way of finding jobs, people always look for opportunities, whereas in unconventional way, people make themselves turn around themselves in such a, people show themselves in such a way that they are perceived as an opportunity. Companies perceive them as an opportunity rather than they are being perceived as looking for opportunities. So there are a couple of conventional versus unconventional roles, and due to interest of time, I can't go in the details, a bit of details in unconventional ways. If you need something details on unconventional ways, this is particularly, I would say, it is customized to one's own profile. I cannot do it in a one size fit all basis. That's why I've just given a general unconventional ways. But if you need something to tailor down with your own profile, you can connect with me on connect@careerisland.com. Rakhi is the one who would be a first point of contact for you, and we can help you on that. Next, there has been a news in the market. I'm not sure whether you have read those news, and there has been a couple of articles also, or articles as well, that we know that in this current COVID market, the jobs are down, pay scales are cutting down, there are not enough jobs in the market, and we see that this could go for a few months more, maybe until September. So these are all speculations, but these are the companies which have openly declared in media, in news, and to some of the correspondents, that their hiring plan will not going to change. And what is about their hiring plans? For example, if we talk about Mastercard, so Mastercard has confirmed that Mastercard is going to continue hiring despite COVID-19 for its testing, quality, development, and analysis roles. Fidelity is also going to continue with its roles for developers, testers, and DevOps. Zalando, which is fashion market, is going to look for product managers, front-end engineers. HubSpot is mainly for technical roles. Again, Slack is for BizOps, business operations, and customer success. So this is just to give you directions that you should watch out for these companies. If you are fit for all these roles, mainly these are tech roles. I would say Ireland is a market of tech, pharma, and finance only. Other industries is not big in size over here. So IT and pharma being the leader. So these are the companies, and these are the quite some roles which companies would look for, and they would continue. So this should be on your radar for sure, and you should be look at them from time to time. Next, I'll just quickly talk about future after COVID-19, what's going to happen after COVID-19. So this is not an exhaustive list, but these are the roles which would be, uh, I expect would be rush, and this would be rushed, and this would be in demand because of change in behavioral of customer buying behavior, change in company behavior, moving from on-premise softwares to cloud computing, getting more customers through digital marketing, moving all their codes to DevOps, doing some research in biotech and pharmaceuticals, taking data to a deeper level through deep learning, machine learning, getting full stack developers, going from preventive to more advanced methodologies of cybersecurity. So these are, I would say, 6 areas. These are not exhaustive list, but these are the areas which, if you are into all these, then I see that the future after COVID-19 should be good for you, and there should be ample number of opportunities after COVID-19. There may be few more, but it is not an exhaustive list. All right, so time for questions. I think I'm done with my slides, and I would be open for all the questions if you have anything